Hi everyone, I'm Toby Capwell. I'm curator of Arms and Armor here at the Wallace Collection, and today I want to take you back to the early 16th century, to the German Renaissance, to meet one of the greatest armorers who ever lived. In these talks, we often focus on great artists and great art. It might not seem quite so obvious that someone like a Renaissance armorer is an artist, but actually they were. They were artists and engineers at the same time. And the things in these rooms are technical equipment for fighting, but they're also expressive works of art of great power. And that's how we have to think about them, as both of those things at once. These fascinating fragments, a knightly helmet and a set of complete leg armor, are almost all that remains of a rich armor for war made in Austria in the early 16th century. Their maker, Konrad Zeusenhofer, was born sometime in the late 15th century in the great armor-making city of Augsburg in southern Germany. Unfortunately, we know nothing of his early life and training in the craft of the armorer. He's first recorded in 1500, by which time he was already a skilled armorer working in the Austrian city of Innsbruck, the capital of Tyrol and one of the main residences of Maximilian I, Archduke of Austria and future Holy Roman Emperor. Maximilian is perhaps the most important figure in the history of the Northern Renaissance. Before he became Archduke, Maximilian also had a strong claim by marriage to the Duchy of Burgundy, diverse territories located in modern-day France, Belgium, and Holland. A foreign ruler who did not speak the local languages was not easily accepted, however, and Maximilian quickly found that he had to win over the Burgundian and Flemish nobility, not just through favors and diplomacy, but through personal feats of arms. Above everything else, he had to create an image for himself, that of a strong, heroic, and enlightened prince, God's rightful representative on earth. As well as personally leading his armies into battle, Maximilian also learned how to create powerful images to broadcast that message throughout Christendom. To this end, he employed many of the greatest artists of the time, including Albrecht Dürer and Hans Birkmeier, and made use of all forms of visual mass media then available: printing, portraits, sculpture, stained glass, coins, and medals. The core iconography of these glorifying images was Maximilian himself, invariably clad in armor and prepared for battle, to defend his people and his rights at the hazard of his own person, a paragon of chivalry akin to King Arthur and Charlemagne, reborn in the Renaissance. To fight successfully as a leader in the front line, Maximilian needed good armor. But armor was not simply protective equipment for fighting. It was also an expressive sculptural and decorative art form that transformed the artist's patron into the living embodiment of power and righteousness, the personification of chivalry itself. Complete plate armor was what distinguished the aristocratic warrior or knight from all other fighting men. It was also a proclamation of wealth and status. Therefore, armor was a fundamental aspect of Maximilian's identity as a Renaissance ruler, and a key element of the iconography of his power. Maximilian needed armor, and lots of it. In 1504, Konrad Zeusenhofer was employed for a period of 6 years to work exclusively for Maximilian as head of his new court workshop. Now, Zeusenhofer was not only responsible for making armors for Maximilian's own personal use, but also for presentation as gifts to members of his extended family, his noblemen, and foreign rulers and diplomats. In just 4 of the following years, from 1511 to 1514, the Imperial Court Workshop produced over 1,000 armors and armor parts. These examples of Zeusenhofer's work, now in the Wallace collection, were made early in this most prolific period. The helmet is an armet, a type developed in Italy towards the end of the 14th century. It is designed to fully enclose the head by means of hinged cheek pieces fastened at the chin, allowing the helmet to open up to accept the wearer and provided with a pivoting visor to protect the face. The chance to handle something like this is a real privilege. You know, things like this are depicted in the art of Albrecht Dürer and Hans Birkmeier and the other great artists of the German Renaissance, but this is the real thing. This is an artifact of their real physical world. And it creates a profound sense of a connection between me sitting here and events 500 years ago in the German Empire. I look at images of jousts and tournaments and battles fought in this period with knights and noblemen wearing helmets like this. And here is one. And it's artistically absolutely consistent with the art. The very fine quality of the etching is absolutely in the style of Albrecht Dürer and the other great artists of the age. As well as being a remarkable demonstration of sculpture in steel, these pieces also carry very fine etched and gilt decoration in the form of elegant borders and strapwork bands, within which Maximilian's personal device of the pomegranate dominates the ornament. These pieces are actually a really early example of an etched and gilt armor. Etching as a decorative process had only been invented about 10 or 15 years before this armor was made. So it's still a very, very new technique, and artists are still exploring the ways that it can best be used to decorate an armor like this. They're only doing the very basic technique, where the areas to be decorated are covered with an acid-resistant coating, a resist, usually bitumen or wax-based material that will protect the surface from the corrosive chemicals, the acid. And then the etcher takes a needle-like graving tool and just scratches the design out from the resist. So it's almost like he's drawing on the armor, except he's then getting the acid, the corrosives, to do the work for him. After he's done his design, he applies that corrosive paste, the active ingredient of which is usually mercuric chloride or sublimate, very nasty stuff indeed. And that chemical selectively eats away the metal, but only just off of the surface and only where he's scratched out his wonderful pomegranate vines and foliation. And this is a hugely important moment in the whole history of armor as an art form. It's still a very common misconception that full plate armor is clunky and cumbersome, that it restricts the movements of the wearer, but nothing could be further from the truth. When you have the chance to get armor out of the case, you start to experience the true mastery that an armorer like Konrad Zeusenhofer had over his materials and the ability to create a human exoskeleton that moves effortlessly with the body inside. There's nothing cumbersome about that. When wearing an armor like this, someone like the Emperor Maximilian preserves his physical dignity at all times. He remains able to move gracefully, elegantly. He can fight, he can ride his horse, do everything he would do ordinarily. We cannot and may never be able to say for whom precisely these magnificent pieces were made. Nevertheless, they remain a testament to the skill and subtlety of Konrad Zeusenhofer, one of the greatest practitioners of the Renaissance art of armor.